Hello guys. In this video we will understand and learn about handling the global exception in ASP.NET Core 8. ASP.NET Core, the cross-platform technology which we use it for building the modern apps. The main power of ASP.NET Core lies with its API. Yes, we use this API for many purposes. We use this for building the simple data services, as well as we can further take it for building the microservices. Now, as you know that ASP.NET Core comes up with the middleware pipeline, and in this middleware pipeline we have many things. We configure exceptions, we configure logging, we configure the static files, we configure authentication, authorization, and we can even create the custom middleware. Middleware is a power of ASP.NET Core, because with this we can write all such custom logic that we want to get executed globally for every request. So this is a replacement of HTTP handler and HTTP module. If you have already worked with middlewares with ASP.NET Core, you can understand that. But now in ASP.NET Core 8, we have been provided with something new for handling an exception, which is IExceptionHandler middleware. What is this guy actually? So IExceptionHandler middleware interface, this provides a centralized way to handle exceptions within your applications. This interface is part of the Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Diagnostics namespace. And this has been used by the exception handler middleware to manage the exceptions in more consistent manner. Means we write one single code block for handling all the exceptions. So our standard exception middleware makes the use of this exception handler, and it allows us to write our own logic for handling the exception and taking an action on that. This interface, IExceptionHandler interface, I'll right click and I'll take you to the definition of this. So this interface has a method TryHandleException or TryHandleAsync, which returns a valued as Boolean object. And then there are three parameters passed to it. We have HTTP context. You know that HTTP context is the current request. HTTP request through which the request response are handled. So this represents the request in the current pipeline. Then the second parameter we have exception, represent the type of exception that has been thrown while executing the current request. And the third parameter is cancellation token. So advantage of this method is that this allows us to write our own custom logic, but you see that this returns Boolean. So what's that Boolean here? So if we return true from this, this means the exception have occurred. It has been handled. So pipeline will stop the execution. Right, so whatever the middlewares are there, it will stop the execution of them and then it will return the response back. So whatever the logic that we wrote for this method to send the response, that response will be sent back. Whereas if the method returns false, it is going to continue the execution. That means there is no error. So now here, let's see the implementation. So I have the ASP.NET Core app API application where I have already added packages for my entity framework core, because I want to handle the exception for database. So I have all those necessary packages which are there in front of you. Then the next thing is that I have an infrastructure folder, and in this infrastructure folder I have error details. So this error details class I have defined because whatever the exception message that I want to send back to the client, I want the descriptive information of the exception, that the type name, what type of exception is in fired, some title, the error message, and other request details. Means what was the request for, and then its response. This is what is it. Now with the entity framework code first approach, I already have this department.cs, and I'm connecting to my database server over here to the department table, and DPD number is my primary key. So that's the thing. Now I have the class IExceptionHandle interface class, which is implementing the IExceptionHandler interface, and TryHandleAsync method has been implemented. Now since I'm handling the database exception for performing the insert, update, delete type of operation, so currently I'm focusing over here to the post request. So if the primary key exception is occur, this is definitely going to give me the DB update exception. So I'm checking that over here with if condition. So I'll say if exception is DB update exception, then here it is. And then I'm writing my own logic about the response status code as internal server error, that's 500. Content type is application/JSON. And then the instance of the error details class is created, where I'm setting the status, I'm setting the type name, the type of exception occur, the title, the exception message, the error message, and then what is the request that causes an exception and the path for that. So this is what the implementation is. Here you can further write your code, like if at all you want to log the exception in database, you can do that here. Okay. Or you want to log it into file system or anywhere else, right? So those things that can be written here, right? So I have written a very simple logic right now, and then I'm sending the response back with the right JSON async, right, as JSON async. It's an extension method for the response object, and I am returning true here. This means that now it should handle the exception and the pipeline has to stop. That's the thing. Now, one of the best part of this IException handle over here is that, apart from our centralized exception handling and customizable response as we did here, one more thing is that it is having its integration with a dependency injection. So this means that the class which is now implementing an IExceptionHandler interface, this class we can register into the DI of ASP.NET Core, as like I have done here. Builder.services.addExceptionHandler and AppExceptionHandler. That's what it is. Okay, so this is the registration. Then of course I'm having the middleware, that app.useExceptionHandler. So this useExceptionHandler, this is the middleware method. What this will do is that this will make a use of the IExceptionHandler type implementation to handle the exception. Then I have the minimal endpoint over here for post, where I'm injecting my DB context class. Of course, this DB context class is been registered here, right, which is using the default connection string which is there in my app settings.json, right, and then it is performing the add operation into my department table. Right, now this uses a try catch block, so if an exception occur, it will directly throw that exception. So let me put a breakpoint on this. Also, I'm going to go here into the exception handler and let me put a breakpoint on this. Right, now this is what the app that is running. Okay, and now what I'm doing over here is that I'm going to say try it out. Let me pass the value for DPDNO, DPD name, location and capacity. So of course I'm passing 10. The 10 is already there in my table. Maybe here I'll say DPD, something like that. I'm having location over here. Okay, and some capacity, and let me execute it. So it's going back. Okay, so naturally the exception will be thrown here, right? I continue my debugging and it's going here. So HTTP context, right? The exception has occurred, and here this is the DB exception, right? Saying primary key constant over there. So let me do it this, right? Error details are generated. right, with database error, write this message. The request detail is post request for a DPD path. Okay, DB update exception and the status as 500. The same thing what we have actually implemented it over here. Okay, that's what the thing is. So the response will be written here F5 and see that this is what the response is. So no more separate custom middleware for handling an exception. We can simply make a use of the class implementing IExceptionHandler, right? We implement the TryHandleAsync method, write the logic, and then we register that class into the DI container, dependence injection container, and then we make a use of the use exception handler middleware, right? And that's it. So this is how we handle the global exception in ASP.NET 8, ASP.NET Core 8. Thank you guys. Happy coding.